You don't even know I got a gun. I can shoot everybody and just walk away and nobody even know because I put my mask on first.
Today on the Tom Kelly Show, my romance with New York City is over and I'm ready to see other cities. Let's start the show.
The Tom Kelly Show.
Yep, that's enough. I'm not even playing the happy music today. I'm not going to play the happy theme song. Trigger warning, spoiler alert. I'm ready to see other cities. You are experiencing a serious or emotional episode of the Tom Kelly Show. This is the podcast where one stand-up comedian owns his midlife crisis. That's me. I try to make it funny at times. I try to bring in guests who I enjoy. And overall, I'm on this theme of making my life better. I'm on this theme of growing. And one of the things that has been coming up for the last 3 years I've been doing this podcast for is my relationship with New York City. Are things better than the awful times of the pandemic? They are, but they're not as good as they were in 2010 or 2015. And our standard for how great New York City is doing is, well, at least the murder rate isn't as high as it was in 1973. The honest to God truth is I'm one of many human beings who have been quiet quitting the city that I love. And I am a real New Yorker, and I want to be careful. There's a guy, James Altucher, who wrote, he's been on the program. James Altucher, a stand-up comedian, investor, chess champion, an author, wrote a article that got published in the New York Post. New York City is dead forever. It's never coming back. I'm not that guy. But I'm the guy or girl who's in a relationship, who's ready to see someone new, but doesn't want to break up with my current significant other until I have chemistry with another potential significant other. Being a New Yorker, I think, is in large part complaining about New York. That's part of the process. I have an unhealthy relationship with my city. And remember, I was born here, man. I was born here, and then, honest to God, I'm a Brooklyn-born kid. My parents would have stayed in Brooklyn forever, except for the fact that I think they felt when the schools were starting to get rougher in the 80s that me, their oldest born son, wasn't tough enough to take the B-52 bus across Avenue U to the subway to go to the Catholic schools or whatever the route was. They sure didn't think 8-year-old me was man enough for that or would grow up to be man enough for that. Anyway, I don't know, but I keep coming back thinking things are going to get better. So my romance with New York is over. It's not the increased use of drugs that I've seen on the streets. I mean, I've seen guys shooting heroin. It's not that I have seen vagrants harassing elderly people, including one Asian lady and one older man of color down the block in my fancy Upper West Side neighborhood. My relationship with New York is over, and it's not because my friend Lucas had his phone ripped from his hand in front of the very comedy club I work at 3 or 4 days a week and where I have to stand outside because we don't have a green room. My romance with New York is over, and it's not because of the man who was screaming, "I wish I had my gun to shoot everybody on this train," when the train was stopped on West 50th Street.
You don't even know I got a gun. I can shoot everybody and just walk away and nobody even know because I put my mask on first. Yeah, no problem. What's that, weed? Oh, you give me some weed? Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And my romance with New York is over, and it's not because I saw someone shooting poop rockets into oncoming traffic on the Long Island Expressway. So I was just driving on the Long Island Expressway, westbound towards New York City, and I saw a car pulled over and a person next to the car bent over with their pants down, mooning westbound traffic, and then suddenly diarrhea started shooting out of their ass as if it were a water cannon. my romance with New York is over. And it's not because my beloved new car, my Jeep, my brand new 2018 used Jeep, got broken into on West 75th Street, doors away from millionaires and billionaires. What broke my love of New York City was after I spent $650 on fixing 2 windows that got shattered in my car getting broken into, is I got a note from the landlord saying the rent is going up $250 this year. I'm paying extra for what? What am I paying extra for? I mean, the man sleeping outside on my street. What is, I mean, and again, he wrote a nice note. Taxes are up, blah, blah, blah. And I want to keep this a happy podcast, but I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can, because I do love New York. And listen, it's not just, the way policing has changed since 2020. There's been, on a few fronts, the way we approach crime in New York City needed to be more equitable. I, as a Caucasian man on a mountain of privilege, concede that. But I'm also going to concede that a lot of New York City policies are not taking us in the right direction. And is there a way to not sound racist by saying, I believe certain things with policing and certain laws that are on the book needed to evolve a bit? And also say that what we are doing isn't working. Part of why I wanted to do, listen, in New York City's been a mess for years. I don't know if crime is actually up if you look at the statistics, but it feels dirtier. Last week, while walking between comedy shows, I was on 6th Avenue, blocks away from New York City, and a mentally ill man rushed up to me to make me flinch. I mean, that was at roughly 47th and 6th, right across from the Fox News studios, block away from what we would call Rockefeller Center. City's dirtier, vandalism. Part of why I wanted to do the podcast on why I want to leave New York City, or why the romance is over. Again, I actually want to stay in New York City. I want the spark to come back. And part of why I'm even doing this semi-negative podcast on YouTube is just to show the video of the guys breaking into my car. I mean, 2 people, the car alarm went off. 2 neighbors called the police. And I want to be careful. The NYPD 20th Precinct and the 2 women officers who came to do my police report the next morning were professional, sympathetic, and kind. And the police came within 5 minutes of the phone call to 911, which my friend in Los Angeles says that's a great response time. But whoever was breaking into these cars, they were a pro. 2 pros. Look at them on the Vespas. They broke into at least 1 car on Central Park West, a Range Rover, just out of range of the building security cameras. 5:30 in the morning, broad daylight. Rich people houses. Was anybody hurt in my break-in? No. Did I lose that much? They took things that add up to $1,000 for me to replace it. They took my ugly hiking Crocs that I bought up in Maine at the Croc outlet. Retail value about $70. The Apple charging cord, $15 to $30. AutoZone air compressor, about $70 or $80. Tire deflators, $30. Prada sneakers that I bought at a thrift store for $30, but I saw them in retail for $300. They actually dropped those running away from the crime, and they dropped my biking shoes, 11-year-old biking shoes, 11-year-old shoes. They smelled. And, and they wound up dropping 1. Great. Thanks, Cinderella. Maybe Prince Charming will come find me. So I think I had to count $340 worth of stuff, and they kept trying to get into an expensive toolbox that had no tools in it. And I don't know. I wrote this out. My friend Dennis liked what I wrote about it, and I wanted to turn it into a podcast. I wanted to save the value of these words. And the funny one is just when I found my Magic of New York City coming back, I went to the glass shop, got everything fixed. It was a day-long process getting the glass fixed because the arms for the windows that hold up the rear window on the Jeep were broken. So I had to go try to find replacement parts. And in the middle of all that, then just when I got that moment of I've taken the car to the car wash, I vacuumed myself, still a little peck of glass here and there, fine. But just when I accepted it, then I got the note from the landlord saying the rent's going up $225. And frankly, for as expensive as my apartment is, it's not a bad, I still have an okay deal. And you get into that. Where else would I go? It's funny, and we talk about how much I love Maine. And it's not just how much Maine has for me. It's really what Maine has that New York doesn't. And frankly, Maine, Portland is starting to get into their liberal fights too. They have tent cities popping up. The difference between Portland, New York, and California is cold weather. And I don't want to get political. I don't. There are certain rules that allow Airbnbs and stuff in New York City. And what you're starting to see on the Upper West Side is as rent control units open up, that should be opened up for not even me, but for poor working people. They're going to friends of the landlords, and they're turning into long-term Airbnbs where they're paying a crazy amount of money. And of course, the landlords are going to try to get old people like me out. And I don't want to ramble on the negatives too much. It's, again, it's, that's the negative, and now I got to figure out what's my positive. I love New York. Here's footage of Central Park from yesterday. Picturesque. Look at it. That's postcard video. That's Sheep's Meadow. Walk through the park. But the thing with New York is you never know when that love is going to be taken away in a second. And lately, every time I'm having a good moment, the balloon boop, gets popped. That's the negative. And I think I've emotionally committed to at least one more year here. And this is also the magic of New York. And this is my positive. I got one job interview out. I'm doing this podcast. Certain numbers on my Instagram and TikTok are going up because I'm frankly doing jokes that I would never have done 3 years ago, making fun of that serial killer. But here's the thing that New York does to you too. Sometimes while it's beating you to the ground, there's that moment of retribution. I've got one potential job for September. You never know. You're one audition or phone call away from being a billionaire. And that's what I'm holding out for. So I don't know if I am breaking up with New York City, but I am in an open relationship with New York City. I'm ready to cheat on New York City with Maine. I'm ready to cheat on New York City with Florida. And I'm ready to cheat on New York City with any other dirty city that may or may not have herpes. And and I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go in. Yeah. I'm ready to cheat on New York City with Long Island. And there's something to be said about that. Do I want to start my morning with trees every day, drive in, do my stand-up comedy spots, and drive back home? I'm getting close to that point. If there's no job keeping me here during the mornings, why not start my day with near geographically convenient to people I love in my family? That might be next. Problem with Long Island is it feels like I'm like Goldilocks in the political Three Bears. My porridge is too cold over here and it's too hot over there. I'm looking for just right, and I just can't find it. But I like that analogy. I am not breaking up with New York City, but I do want to be in an open relationship with her. So if anybody wants to do a city booty call with me, invite me. I'll come down. Get me to a comedy club. Beautiful women outside the 100-mile radius. I am on the prowl. So there you go. I think that's the audio podcast of, listen, sometimes this podcast is real. And I hope that you don't mind me being real with my fear, insecurity, and a little bit of sadness. And honestly, again, folks, I just wanted to get money out of that video I got of the guy screaming about the subway. I actually never released it on my TikTok because it was too depressing, and somebody asked me to stop taping at the end of it. And yeah, man. But also, that's a real moment. That's really happening in New York, and that's a real thing that on that subway train where they stopped the train to take care of the mentally ill man who was threatening to shoot everybody. That was a late night Saturday train. I'm a comedian who was rushing home to just watch Netflix. 2 stops away, I paid for the cab. I can afford it. I'm a big deal. But what about the working people who had to get up to their hometowns, North New York City and the Bronx and whatnot? What about the mom who was working in a restaurant and trying to get back to their kids? There was a lot of people on that train. And it wasn't just, that's the one thing I don't like when I see quality of life declining. People are always saying, hey, it's just affecting the rich people. Go take your Uber. That's New York. Again, New York. I'm ready to swing with other cities. I'm a city swinger. So that's it, folks. Listen, if you're looking for a happy podcast, just did a really fun one with weddings just a little bit ago. Go listen to that one. And listen, we got a mix of shows coming up. Real interviews, deep interviews, a lot of great content in the past if you have time to check it out. Remembering my friend Bill Getty, talking about my love of women's sports, talking about who is in your bridal party and what does that say about a couple. And then a couple of silly interviews with a couple of comedian friends. And listen, folks, I'm a man looking for answers. And with your help, we're getting closer to finding them. Until next time, good night, New York. Until something better comes up.